Okay, today I'm going to go over the review that you worked on in class. If you already worked it, then you can just be checking your answers so you can skip along. If you haven't worked it yet, then I'm going to show you how to work each problem. And if you can do this review, then you should be pretty good for the test tomorrow because I took it directly from the test. Okay, the test has 16 questions. There's 8 on the review. Basically, you can double each section that we do on the review. Okay, so let's get started. So number 1. Find the inverse. Whenever it says to find the inverse, that means you're switching your x's and your y's and you're getting y by itself. So I'm going to write x is equal to 2y minus 1 over 2. All I've done is switch the location of x and y. Then, to undo a fraction, whether it's written like this or anything else, you always multiply by the opposite. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2, and that's going to make that go away. So I'm left with 2x is equal to 2y minus 1. Then I add my 1 over. So I get 2x plus 1 is equal to 2y. Divide both sides by 2. So my inverse of y is equal to 2x plus 1 over 2. Okay? And you can leave your answer just like that. So for the second one, same thing. I'm going to switch x and y. So x is equal to 1/3 y minus 5. Okay? Now this fraction is written differently than this one. But same concept. I multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm multiplying by 3 over 1, which means I multiply both sides really by 3, because 3 over 1 is 3. That makes this fraction go away and this fraction go away. So I have 3x is equal to y minus 5. I can add my 5, add 5. So my inverse is equal to 3x plus 5. Okay, so switching the x and the y is all that you're doing on there. Are you kidding me right now? Okay, sorry about that. I had to take a phone call. Here we go. Okay, so let's do the next one. So the same thing. We're finding the inverse of the following. So we are going to switch the x and y. But in this case, it's the squared, so we have to do a little bit different. So x is equal to y plus 2 squared minus 3. Then you add the 3 over. You always move the standalone number first. So I get x plus 3 is equal to y plus 2 squared. Now we've learned that the inverse of a quadratic is a square root, so I square root both sides, and what that does is gets rid of the squared. So then I have the square root of x plus 3 is equal to y plus 2. Then I subtract the 2, subtract the 2, and remember this is all one thing, nothing can go inside of it once it's square rooted. So I get x plus 3 minus 2 on the outside is equal to my inverse. Okay, so if you start with a squared, your answer should be a square root to find the inverse. So on this one, I'm starting with a square root. I should end with a quadratic. So I get x is equal to the square root of y plus 5 minus 7. So I add the 7 because it's the standalone number. So I get x plus 7 is equal to the square root of y plus 5. I square both sides because the opposite of a square root is a quadratic. So I get x plus 7 squared, there should be a squared over here, is equal to y plus 5. Then I subtract 5, subtract 5. So my final answer is x plus 7 squared minus 5 is equal to y inverse. Okay? So, in case you haven't noticed, there's a pattern to this. So I started with a plus 2 and a minus 3. I ended with a plus 3 and a minus 2. They switched places and they switched signs. Same over here. I started with a plus 5 and a minus 7. I ended with a plus 7 and a minus 5, and they switched places and they switched functions. Okay, so that's a little way to make sure that you did it correctly. Alright, the next one is solved by factoring. Factoring means that we're doing our multiply and our add method. Okay, so to multiply, you do 2 times negative 3, so my number is negative 6. My add comes from here, which is negative 7. So I would get x minus 6, x minus 1, they add to negative 7. Don't forget there's a 2 in the front, so I have to divide this by 2, divide by 2. Now, because I'm solving, I can simplify these down, or I can just leave them. I'm going to simplify this to be x minus 3, but I'm going to leave this one as x minus 1/2, because I'm really going to solve for x anyway, so the signs of this is really just what's going to change. So my final answer should be 3 and x equals 1/2. So you don't have to really necessarily split them if you can see that you just change the sign each. Okay, for this one, our multiply number is negative 15. My add number is 2. So I'm going to do negative 5. No, I'm going to do positive 5 and negative 3. That's what I meant. So I'm going to do x plus 5, x minus 3 equals 0. So all I have to do really is switch the signs of those numbers. There's nothing in the front to divide by. So my final answer should be x equals negative 5, x equals positive 3. Okay? Now, if you don't remember how to factor, the other way to solve a quadratic, no matter whether I tell you to factor or not, is to use the quadratic formula. So that's what's on the next slide. Alright, you do need to know the quadratic formula in order to do it. Oh, we already worked those, ignore those. Okay, so I have this, so my A is negative 2, B is negative 1, C is also negative 1. So I've got x equals negative 1, so that becomes a positive, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A, which is negative 2. Alright, I've already done this in my calculator, so I end up with x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 all over negative 4. Now negative 7, we've learned that that is something that's imaginary, and we deal with imaginary by making it x equals 1 plus or minus I square root 7 over negative 4. Don't forget that you know that, therefore you have to keep going and simplify it like that. And that would be your final answer. Okay? Now, the next one, I'm going to read it and then do it on a different page. But it says, Mr. Lumen replaced a square window with a rectangular one. The new window is 3 feet wider and 2 feet higher than the square one. It has an area of 30 feet. How long was the side of the original square? So if we let x be the length of the square, that's what we're solving for. So in the final answer, your answer should be x. So let's work that over here. So he had a square window with side length of x, and he's creating a bigger window by adding 2 to this side and adding 3 to this side. So what that means is x plus 2, x plus 3 has to equal my area, which is 30. Okay? To find this answer, you have to actually FOIL it out. So I get x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 30. Now I can do that because I know that I'm going to add 2 plus 3 is 5, 2 times 3 is 6. Then you always want this to equal 0 in order to solve it. So x squared plus 5x minus 24 is equal to 0. And I'm solving this. Now you can use a quadratic formula, or you can see if it'll factor. Now I know that 24 is 6 times 4, which won't get me to 5, but it's also 8 times 3, so a positive 8 minus 3 is positive 5, and 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. So I'm actually going to use factoring because it's faster. So I can say x plus 8 times x minus 3 is equal to 0. So my two answer choices is x equals negative 8, x equals 3. Now you can't have a negative side length of a square, so your answer is just 3. Okay, and to check it, you can plug it back in. 3 plus 2 is 5. 3 plus 3 is 9. That's funny. 3 plus 2 is 5. 3 plus 3 is 6. That makes more sense, right? It's Monday. 6. 5 times 6 is 30. So that means that the answer is actually right, and I'm not just a moron. Okay. Those are the answers to your review. If you can do those, you'll be perfect for the test tomorrow. If you can't do those, I will be here for school today after school and tomorrow morning before the test. Okay? Have a good night. I hope you enjoyed this really bizarre video.